Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Canon 211 on the Paleocrat Diaries. I am your host. I'm Jake Fowler. And this morning, bright and early, I am joined by Dr. Peter Casarella on faculty at Duke University Divinity School. Dr. Casarella, welcome to the program. And good morning, sir.
Good morning, Jake. Thank you for hosting me.
Absolutely. This is my pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure. How are things on the East Coast?
It's a little hot, but otherwise can't complain.
It was about 100 degrees here yesterday as well. So hopefully, I think we're getting some rain tomorrow, thanks probably in part to the hurricane from last week. So that'll help cool it down. But we're not here to talk about weather. You, sir, you are the author of a very interesting and, if I may say so, difficult article in a new journal put out by Word on Fire. The journal is called The New Ressourcement. I've got a copy. This is not the exact issue, but this is what it looks like. This is the summer issue. Dr. Casarella's article is featured in the spring issue, which is number 1 of volume 1. The title of the article, Romano Guardini and the Question Concerning Technology, immediately perked my ears, so to speak, because I'm a big fan of Guardini and technology. Obviously, this is something that theologians need to grapple with. So let me begin by welcoming you once more. And perhaps could you offer a brief overview of your article and why you wanted to write something like it?
Sure. So the question itself, the so-called question concerning technology, has been on my mind for a long time. It was actually the question that I read about when I was in college, and that I, on that basis, for good or ill, decided to write my senior thesis on Heidegger. And then I left it aside because of a kind of disappointment with the way that Heidegger resolved things in the end, and only came back to it recently at the invitation of the New Ressourcement Conference, which was organized by Word on Fire. Having studied Guardini over the years, but deciding to dedicate myself to the contemporary of Heidegger, Romano Guardini, who looks at the question concerning technology, sometimes in the same way as Heidegger, but through a Christian lens. I wanted to highlight here, and then eventually in the book I hope to write on Romano Guardini on technology and liturgy, I wanted to highlight how a Christian perspective could look as deeply as Heidegger did, but get beyond many of the constraints that I had discovered in Heidegger's approach.
So it seems Heidegger has a sort of pessimistic, if I'm understanding you correctly, what you wrote is that he thinks that the question concerning technology is actually bringing about the end of the history of being. And he was a metaphysician, if I recall. So he made being, the study of being, his living. And it seems like, again, if I'm reading this right, that he was very put off by this whole thing. And you contrast that with Guardini's, maybe not, optimism is an okay word, but I don't think Guardini is very excited about all this new technology, but I think he doesn't view it as much of a threat as Heidegger might. Am I on track here?
I think both think of it as a threat, but what the new dimension that you find in Guardini is the hope that comes from the resurrection of Jesus Christ, which is systematically excluded, among many other things, in Heidegger's worldview.
So how does Heidegger in general approach this question? Or maybe actually, let's back up. What is the question that they're trying to solve, that they're tackling?
So both are writing in Weimar, Germany, with Hitler's rise to power, and both are having to, in different ways, come to grips with that. Neither of them were particularly successful. Heidegger actually embraces Hitlerism and is rewarded with a post as rector or president of the University of Freiburg, and he ends his presidential address with a Heil Hitler. Heidegger later distances himself from National Socialism, but his diaries show that he was actually more convinced of their anti-Semitism than they were, and that's kind of a new thing that's come out in Heidegger studies. Guardini is exiled by the National Socialists from his position in Berlin, but also I think we could say was a little slow to develop that critique. Anyway, my point was not to talk about the politics, but they're both in that milieu in which militarism and the use of new weapons that can destroy humanity, are literally in front of them. And then also, as Guardini writes about in the 1920s in so-called letters from Lake Como, I mean, what is the change of perspective in the world? I mean, he's worried about steamboats. He's worried about mechanization, the machine. And so what is the worldview that is brought about when we're no longer looking at the world in just a gaze of wonder, and now we're looking at the world as instruments for our fabrication and self-fabrication? So the so-called Homo faber, man, the maker of all things, and literally the one who can create and recreate in a way that was formerly assigned only to the living God, that becomes then the question that has to be interrogated and asked. What is the nature of this technology that the world is embracing for all kinds of different purposes? And what does that teach us about, well, as you said, for Heidegger, the nature of being itself, and then the nature of the human person?
It appears we have a special guest commentator.
I'm delighted.
Yeah, she may have had a nightmare. She came up the stairs quite upset a moment ago. But so that's very enlightening. And so Heidegger and Guardini then, from roughly the same cultural context, approaching these in two different ways. And then it's obvious that the distinction is in Guardini's Catholicism. And I'm assuming Heidegger is an atheist, but I don't know that for sure.
Let me say just a word about that. That's actually very, that's basically true. Heidegger at one point was very immersed.
Ladies and gents, the preview is over. To watch the full video, go to canon211.locals.com and become a member, become a supporter, get access to exclusive content, stay in touch with the Canon 211 community. Well, that's it for today. Never give up. Keep on smiling. And memento mori. Cheers.